guys, how's it going? So we're about 4 or 5 days into me having this inverter, and I can tell you that I am pleased with it. Um, it's doing really well. I have about, it looks like 15 amps coming in, and right now this is powering a 200 watt water heater for the aquarium, as well as about 50 watts in motors that are in there, and then I have my ups plugged in, which consumes about 28 watts continuous, so that it keeps the battery charged and regulates voltage. So, from based on my tests, it consumes about 2 amps per hour, and it's around 80 to 85% efficient. Now, if you have a very small solar setup, that's definitely not going to help you all that much because it's going to consume quite a bit just to put out what it does. And the thing that I liked about that Royal Power inverter that I had, albeit much smaller, it was very, very efficient. Its standby load was only about an amp, and it was about 95% efficient, 90 to 95. Okay, this is definitely a little less efficient, but it's a lot more powerful, and it definitely has the versatility that I need to wire it directly into the house. So those are things to consider, the kind of investment. If I were to leave this on for 24 hours, it would consume 48 amps for the day. 48 amps would quite literally be my 20% between these two batteries. So in a 24-hour period, it would bring the batteries down to 80% if I didn't power anything else with it. So that's another thing to consider, is the standby time. Now it does have the power save mode. I did try that. What I found is when it was in power save mode, it would come on every 2-3 seconds, just briefly, and then it would shut off. And then I tried plugging this box fan into it, and it was about 3 seconds in, the box fan came on and stayed on. So obviously it's detecting a load, and this would be great for like a refrigerator. Because refrigerators don't run all the time. And as soon as I turned off the fan and it noticed that there was no load, it shut the inverter off. So that's a great feature, but for me, it's pretty much completely useless. But again, it might be great for you. That will help save on certain items. That is, certain items that, like as I said, a refrigerator. So there's a gentleman who has a similar inverter. He has the high frequency version, and I've got the low frequency version, obviously. And he was saying that his battery terminals get really hot. His battery cables get really hot. And I had a 500 watt draw on this for 1 hour yesterday. And this thing was not even warm. It's not even warm right now, not even at all. And it was a 1 hour load. I had about 20 amps coming in from the solar panels. And it was about 500-600 watts going out for 1 hour, and I could hardly. I mean, it was literally room temperature. The terminals, they weren't warm at all. Nothing was warm. Nothing. The batteries, the cables, nothing. So that was one of my concerns when he'd mentioned that. I thought, oh shoot, this is going to be a problem. Now, I don't have the battery capacity to really push it to its limits, and I'm not going to try until I do. So I'm not going to make any ridiculous experiments and, either damage my batteries or damage the inverter. But I can tell you that for the size of the battery bank I have, this thing is working perfect. I'm having absolutely no problems with it. The only issue, the only complaint that I have, and I'm looking into getting this fixed, is when my draw is near zero and my batteries are charging. Let's say that I've got 20 amps coming in, the batteries are at total, full float. What happens is the voltage spikes up briefly for maybe a tenth, quarter of a second or so, above 14.5 volts, just ever so briefly. It will shut this inverter down, and that's a problem. Now, if I have a load, a good load on the battery bank, then it's much slower to reach 14.25 volts, which is where it cuts off the charging and lets it fall back below 13.6 volts, which is what the charge controller is doing. So I have to be really careful if I'm going to be away to make sure that my load somewhat matches my input until I can figure out how to fix that problem. There's another gentleman on YouTube who had one of these, and he actually opened it up and figured out what was going on, and he put some kind of a I don't remember if it was a resistor or some circuit in there to fake the inverter into thinking the voltage was lower than it actually was. I will never run into a low voltage alarm ever. I'm so conscious about the battery voltage, I'll never bring it down to 10 volts, okay? And so I don't have to worry about it, continuously draining. And besides that, I'm told that once it hits about 11.5 volts, it pretty much just goes into fault. And so I don't have to worry about that really. So anyway, the so far so good basically. I have double aught wire that I'm going to be hooking up to the batteries, and I'm using these copper terminals as well as some heat shrink tubing. I'm going to be making those tomorrow. So I will have double aught wire in place of this 4-gauge wire that's here, and it's going to be tied directly into the batteries rather than using these alligator clips that I've got here. So that will improve things. And then I'm actually going to start adding batteries from there. I'm just going to keep on adding batteries and adding batteries and adding batteries. So, yeah. If you are interested in one of these and you've got an extra $350 laying around, it's actually a good buy. But again, I cannot test its limitations. So if you're buying it to crank 5,000 watts out of it full time, I recommend either going more or going for something that's a little bit more reputable. So, all right, guys, if you have any questions, definitely let me know. But my impressions are solid, and I've got a lot of work to do because I'm going to be rewiring this entire setup. So, take care, everyone.